Hey guys, Chaz at exoticspecialtyparts.com. Today we're going to make a video about Ferrari 360 headlights. This is a common problem, and when I say common problem, I mean almost every single 360 ever made. This includes the coupes, the spiders, the challenge Stradales, and the challenge race cars. And the reason being is there's a piece of the headlight that was made out of a poor material. Previous to my part, there was no option as far as repairing this, which ended up making some pretty nasty mistakes and problems along the way. So I finally sat down and took the time to reverse engineer and recreate this part for everyone. This video is intended to show you what the part's for, how to install it, and hopefully give you a few little tips and tricks along the way. My customers have actually installed far more of these parts than I have myself. At my day job, I've probably installed 2 or 3 sets of these because we're now in the 458, 488 era, and we don't see as many 360s anymore. However, every 360 we see does typically need to have these installed. Anyway, enough talking about it, and let's show you what's going on. So on the 360 headlights, you have a headlight adjuster. Now this is used for your lateral movement up and down to correct the elevation of your headlights. This applies obviously to US, European, every other location that has a 360. All the headlights use the same part. What happens is the original headlight adjuster, the actual plastic boss that it installs into the back of the headlight to make these adjustments, is made out of a terrible material. I believe it's an acrylic plastic, but don't quote me on that. And what will happen is over time, just bumps in the road or even trying to adjust your headlights will cause this to happen. The part just disintegrates. It just falls apart like glass. A little bit closer example, and obviously no longer functions. Now some of the symptoms you'll get from that is if you're trying to adjust your headlights, the headlights will not adjust. You'll sit there and turn the adjuster. It may even feel really loose. On a very rare occasion, if it's completely disintegrated like this, the torque adapter that you're going to interface your screwdriver with may just push the shaft into the headlight housing area where you can't see it from your trunk any longer. Obviously there's a problem. Other symptoms include like driving down a bumpy road. You'll notice your headlights excessively bounce up and down. Lots of other problems, and typically when this part completely fails, your headlights will aim really low. They'll aim down at the ground, so you have poor visibility at night. You can't see very far. I imagine in certain instances and scenarios, the headlight could also aim up, which will cause people to flash you a lot and to be ticked off that your headlights are so bright. Anyway, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how the system works and what my part does to repair it. Alright, so today we're working with a driver's side headlamp that is not in a car. Now, keep in mind, you do not have to have the headlights out of the car to do this process. I just simply have one, and it makes a much better way to give you a video demonstration on how to do this. So this is a driver's side headlight. Same rules apply for the passenger side headlight. It's pretty self-explanatory. You'll see it as you go through. So let's spin the headlight around. And on the back side, now keep in mind, I've already repaired this headlight, though I'm going to disassemble and reassemble it for demonstration purposes. But depending on the state of disarray your factory adjuster is, you may find this in different ways. And like I said, in the worst case scenario, if this adjuster is completely crumbled and fallen apart, you might even find this rod here has fallen out or is hanging down. It may be hidden behind the headlight somewhere. I do not currently make this rod, and it also cannot be purchased separately from Ferrari. However, if you do need one, reach out. Let me see what I can do. I may be able to recreate this in the future if there's a need for it. I haven't seen one missing yet, but I could see the potential for that happening. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to give you a demonstration based on the headlight being installed in the car. And the reason for that is most people are going to replace these with the headlight in the car. There's no reason to pull the whole headlight out. So you're only going to need a few very basic tools. There are more advanced tools that may make this a little bit easier, but I'll explain that when I get to it. But a Phillips head and a flathead screwdriver. I have a multi-screwdriver here, and a very basic set of pliers. You don't need anything crazy. A set of Nipex large jaws would be awesome, but those are at work. I don't have those here. So I'm going to use these. I think they're literally from a hardware store. A rubber mallet also may come in use, though a press is far preferred, and I'll explain that when we get to that portion of the installation as well. So let's say you have one that's not quite completely demolished yet. It's still installed. If it is completely demolished, you may find parts of these plastic, the original part is down inside the headlight. It's not really a huge deal. If the headlight's out of the car, you can shake it and remove those pieces of plastic. You may also have some luck pulling this rear cover off on this lamp here to vacuum out and pick out some plastic. But again, if it's installed in the car, it's not going to be visible from the outside of the car, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right, let's say you have one that is partially damaged and needs to be replaced. So to remove it, we're going to take these pliers here, and the reason we're going to do this is there's a rubber gasket here, and it's going to make it very stiff and kind of tricky to get out. We don't want to gouge this plastic up, and I'm going to do my best here to give you good visibility on what we're doing, if I can line up with the camera good. All right, so this is the driver's side. I'm going to turn this counterclockwise about 30 degrees or so. And as I do that, this rod will disengage from this assembly, and I'll show you the assembly close up in just a moment. So let's put this here, and it may not be a bad idea, especially if the car's old, dirty, dusty, dry, anything like that. Just spray a little like PB Blaster or WD-40 around this rubber seal to help break this loose. But you're going to grab this assembly right here, and very carefully, you don't want to scar it up. You are going to reuse this outer cap, and you're just going to turn it counterclockwise, again, about 30 degrees. I'm sorry, the visibility here is probably very poor. But as we do that, let's zoom in here. There we go. As we have done that, let's turn the camera as well. There we go. So as we've done that, this rod has begun to disengage. And if I push up just a little, see, it's no longer engaged. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to wiggle it free. It's a little tricky because it wants to go where the adjuster currently is installed. And if you walk it around, it'll come out. There we go. That's free. I'm going to set that to the side. All right, now with the adjuster loose, actually you're going to use this torque rod almost immediately. I forgot to mention that. We're going to install it here, and we're going to drive it by hand. And what we're going to do is, you see this nut on the back side, this drive interface here, we're going to turn it until it is almost flush with the back of this. And we may not make it. I'll explain as we go. You're tipping the headlight down inside the housing from the outside if you look. So I believe that is turn it counterclockwise. We're going to go until it kind of gets stiff. You can feel it pressing on the front of that, and you'll see why in just a moment. I'm going to stop here about a 1/4 inch from it and kind of wiggle this. Oh, there it goes. So the teeth are free now. It is popped free from the headlight, and you'll notice even though it's free from the headlight, it won't come out. And when I pull on it, you'll see these assemblies move. That's because the adjustment rod is still engaged with the headlight assembly. So, not a big deal. You're just going to continue turning this clockwise. And I want to go until this nut on the backside is pretty much flush. I'm just supporting it with my hand here. Now obviously if you're inside the fender well, you're going to be doing it more like this position, but I can get my hand here, so I'm going to do it. Almost there. There we go. So it's free. You can see how it's loose now and moving around. All you do is grab the entire assembly and tip up. It can be a little tricky. It's snapped in there pretty tight. Give me just a moment. There it goes. Okay, sorry, I had to get my hands on it, and with the desk in the way, it's hard. So it's going to go straight up vertically towards the sky, and that's going to disengage this ball that you see right here from a socket inside the headlight. Now I'm going to try to show you that to you, but I can promise you it's very hard to film because it's down inside the light. So getting light into this housing is quite tricky. So yeah, you can actually see it in there just a little bit. There it is. Okay, now you can see it. Sorry for the very strange angle, but you see that little U-shaped cup. That's what you're disengaging from. Okay, now that we've got that explained, we got this part. I'm going to set the headlight to the side for just a moment. We have this part. Now, tearing this down is very simple. There are quite a few pieces of this that you're going to keep. In order to take it apart, number one, we're going to pull this little rubber washer off. I do plan to add these rubber washers to my kit in the future, but to be completely honest, they are a very strange size and they've been very tricky to find. I've tried making them myself with a laser cutter, and unfortunately this rubber is such a soft rubber that it burns very badly. But take the rubber seal, you're going to save that. Alright, now we're going to disassemble the cap portion of this. Right, there we go. take a flathead screwdriver. A pocket screwdriver works excellent for this, but I do not have one here at my home. There's 2 tabs, so if you see the socket right here on opposite sides of it, so one here, one here. There's 2 little tabs you're going to disengage it from. This one's up, and then I'm going to go on this side. There it goes. See how it popped up right there? Okay, so after prying back and forth for just a few moments, sorry, greasy hands, you pop these 2 tabs loose and the cap will lift up like this. It may not come up this high, but it'll come up. And then all you do is pull it off. Pretty simple. Now, on this part, there's a few pieces. They're probably going to fall apart very easily for you. Again, I just reassembled this, so it's greased up. There's the small drive gear that you see here, and the large drive gear that you see here. This is actually a differential. I'll explain that just a little bit more in a moment. And then the cap that holds it all together. You're going to reuse all of these pieces. Now, on top of that, you're going to reuse the metal rod that you see here and replace this. I'll explain that just a little bit. So, the easiest way to remove the metal rod from this drive nut on the end is to use, I believe it's a 7mm wrench that should just slightly fit around the metal rod. Funny enough, I'm in my home shop right now and I don't have one with me. So I'm going to take this pair of pliers as an example, and I'm going to just put it on each side of the rod. Now what you want to do is take and use a punch, something like that. I guess that's a tool I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. And you're going to put it through the center of this nut and you're going to punch the rod out. So you're not actually grabbing the rod here, you're just letting the nut rest on it. So it moves there. You're going to punch that out. So give me just a moment. Alright, so you got the nut right there. This is the original. If yours does survive, I do recommend reusing it. I do reproduce them and I do send them with the kits so that you have another option if this does get broken on disassembly. But if the OEM one works, I'd keep it. It engages really well with this. Alright, now you're just going to thread the rod out of the broken adjuster. So assuming this is a broken adjuster. If it's very broken like the one I demonstrated at the beginning, that's in pieces, obviously you're not going to have to thread it out because it's just going to be a pile of parts. So I'm going to take this apart. Give me just a moment. Okay, you're left with the rod right here. So this is what you should have left over from your headlight adjuster. Hopefully your nut, if it survives, your rod, torque rod here, rubber seal, small gear, large gear, and the cap, and then the metal adjuster. Now I'm going to simply show you reassembly and explain a few little caveats with my part. So you're going to take my part that I send you right here. I recommend using a little bit of dielectric grease. I've already done this, but just a little drop of it right here on the threaded opening. That'll make the next step a little bit easier. You're going to take your threaded rod that you see here with the splines on the end, and you're going to drop it with the small end of the adjuster. You see this end is a little bit more narrow, this end's larger and open. You're going to drop this straight into the top of it like that. And it might have to press in there just a little bit of force. You should be able to do it with your hands. Now this is probably the trickiest part of the whole thing, and it's not hard at all. Grab your pliers, grab the end of the rod carefully. You don't want to chew up the end of the ball here. And you're going to take the first initial turn, kind of push down on the rod and thread it into the part, and you're going to feel really tight, like you're stripping it almost. Don't worry, that's completely normal. When I manufacture these, I made the threads very tight tolerance because you don't want any vibration in this. And when you press those straight splines through, they make a very slight cut. Not the end of the world, don't worry about it at all. After you've made that first 360 degrees or so, you'll notice this may start to thread in much easier, and then you'll get to this point right here. You can just turn it with your hand. And we're going to turn it quite a bit, and I'll explain why in just a moment. You want the straight splines here to reach all the way out the other side of this adjuster. So like that. You can see it's all the way beyond the adjuster. Now you're going to put your nut back on, either your OEM one or the replacement I send you. Again, this is preferred if yours doesn't break. Just slip it over the edge here, and then you may even be able to do this by hand if you're using the original nut. And you can just kind of grab it in your hand like this and then press down on the nut really hard and you'll feel it stop. Now something to keep in mind is the metal shaft, you can see, is not flush with the end of the nut. It's not supposed to be. It should be, and this is a horrible demonstration, probably 1/4 of an inch from the end. It should stop around right here. The reason for that is there is a shoulder inside the nut. Let me grab one and show it to you here. Right There, you can see that shoulder inside. That shoulder rests on the last threads of the rod below the splines. So you're just going to press that down. If you have a benchtop press to install this with, fantastic, especially if you're using the new one I send you, because it can be a very tight fit. You can use a rubber mallet, but like anything else, even though this is designed to fit down on top of this, the shock of hitting it, you risk breaking the part. Again, if you do break your original, and you go to install mine, you have any issues with them, you do break them, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send you another set. It's not a problem at all. I may, especially if you're far from me and it might take some time for you to get the adjusters, I'll probably send you an extra one or two anyway. So, you got this assembly pressed together, just like this. Now we're going to assemble the gear set. So I'm going to set this over to the side for just a moment, and then we're going to go right here. So, you've got the cap. Very simple. Put some dielectric grease down around this base and around this gear here, the larger of the two, and you're going to take the tube end of this gear and you're going to drop it into the case just like that, press it through, it'll stick out the other side. Now you take the small gear, again, a little bit of dielectric grease, and you'll see this U cut out in the side of the cup. You're going to take that, drop it straight down in there, and it should engage and come into contact right there as you see. Now before I put this together any further, I'm going to take this torque rod and just give you a little slight example of what this does. It's a differential. So you're going to slide this into the end of that cap, and then you see I turn this, it turns the center. And that's of course in turn going to turn this nut, which is going to thread that rod in and out, which is going to tip your headlight up and down. It's definitely over engineered, but well, it's Ferrari. So we're going to slide that out. Now next up, you take the U cutout that is on the side of my new part right here. See that little groove? And that's going to capture the other side of this small gear. So you slide the assembly together, slide the nut through that larger gear, just like that. Get it lined up, and it clicks on. It's that easy. It's that simple. Now take your rubber washer. I'd recommend, again, dielectric grease, smearing some on both sides of it. Put it onto the fitting, just like that. And then smear a little bit more dielectric grease. And you can't be too much. You want to put a little bit of dielectric grease on the end of this ball as well. So we got that done. We got our torque rod. Let me grab the headlight again. There we go. Alright, now this is a bit of a tedious process to show, and I'm sorry about that, but I'll explain it the best I can. So you're going to want to take your screwdriver, or sorry, not your screwdriver, your torque rod here, and you're going to want to make sure this rod is threaded out as far as it can be, and I believe that's turning it clockwise. Nope, I lied. It's counterclockwise. Never done this before. You're going to go until this nut on the back side is pretty much flush. You can see it recessing back here. Right there. The reason you want is you want this ball to reach as far as you can. Now we're going to take the headlight right here. We're going to take this fitting and face it straight up. You're going to go inside the headlight, and you're going to find that little U cup from the beginning. Of course, I can't demonstrate it very good. You're going to get that ball on top of the U cup and press down. This is where the dielectric grease on the end of that will help a lot. Mine actually just dropped in very easy. Sometimes, I'll warn you, this can be quite tedious and you'll fight it and get it to snap in there. And then of course it'll try to fall out as you're doing the further adjustments, but you'll get it, don't worry. Now we're going to hold this, and we've got to take our torque rod again, and we've got to adjust it, turning it clockwise to draw this fitting back into the headlight. You don't want to just push it in there because you're pushing against that reflector in the front of the headlight. You don't want to do that. So we're just going to hold it in position right here with my hand, and I'm going to turn this and what's happening, and it's hard to see in the video. Actually, let's see if I can turn it sideways. There you go. And watch this gap right here on the back side as I turn it. See the gap closing? I'm just going to go until that rubber's touching. So I'm not fighting anything in the headlight. Once it's started to recess, you don't have to hold it anymore as much. It'll hold itself for you. There you go. So the rubber's touching. And give it just a couple more turns. Make sure it's flat. There we go. Pop that back out. So that's all flush. Now one more check is you want to pull on this and make sure it's still engaged with the headlight. You know, it's not socketed into the housing yet. You just want to make sure it's still engaged with the reflector. You'll see this move ever so slightly as well, see? So that's good. Now, again, this is designed to do inside the car, so this bracket cannot be removed when the headlight's installed. So you're going to take this again, you're going to fit it back into this hole. It's a little bit tricky. There it goes. We're going to lay this right on top of that, so as I rotate and lock this back into position, you see right there, as I rotate this back clockwise into position, this rod will snap right back into its home where it goes. Very weird angle here, so please be patient with me. You're going to put just a little bit of pressure pushing this into the housing and slip 500 times trying to do it because I'm holding it over the headlight. This is not how you normally do it. Turn it just a little more, give you better visibility. And you may even be able to do this with your hands if you're tough. I'm not that tough, so line the rod back up. Right there. Alright, let's get it to slide together. Keep the rod lined up. Oh, come on. This is very fun. Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. Grab it a little lower. There we go. So that's what it's supposed to do. You can see it engaging right here. And it's going to turn. It's going to turn to a stopping point right about there. And when you do that, you'll see this rod is level. This is fully locked into the housing. Again, this is very tough. Make sure you grease this seal. If you don't, you are going to cuss a lot and you're probably not going to have much success. But the installation is done. The only part of this that's left now is going to be following the headlight adjustment procedure in the service manual. I wish I had that information for you right now, but I don't. But essentially, you will park the car, say 25 feet from a wall on a level ground. A parking garage usually works pretty good. Turn your headlights on, and then wherever you see the cutoff, where your headlights are straight across the wall, you're going to measure from that cutoff to the ground. And there's a certain height you'll set it to. If I can find those instructions, I'll post them in the comments below for you. But once that happens, you'll just pop your trunk out, take the rubber plug that accesses the end of this, and you're going to adjust the headlight up and down by turning this rod, just as you see here. Headlight's bouncing around. But see, as you turn this rod, this nut turns. All of it's functional again, and it should be a super solid assembly when you're done, so you won't have any more vibrating headlights. You'll be able to align your headlights, and that's all there is to it. We finished repairing our headlight. You got your adjuster back installed. Again, if you're more of a reader and you want pictures and better explanation, I've already made a PDF document that explains this entire process. You can find that directly on my website under the parts description, and please do check it out. It may help as well, even if you're more of a video watcher like I am. The pictures and information may help. Hopefully my product helps you. Hopefully you enjoy it and it saves you a lot of time and effort. As your only other option, unfortunately, is to go directly Ferrari and buy a whole headlight. And nobody wants to do that. That's not very reasonable, but when has Ferrari been reasonable about parts? So, if you have any other further ideas for me, you have any other products you may need, I am happy to make them. I currently will produce parts for Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati, Porsche, McLaren, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Bugatti if you need something, race cars, race boats, aircraft, anything along those lines. Now, keep in mind, as you can see, I specifically target small plastic parts, and I don't produce parts that already exist. So if you can already buy it from Ferrari, Lamborghini, whatever, typically I'll just direct you to buy that factory part, that single part. But if it's part of a larger assembly like this situation, that's what I specialize in. That's what I prefer to produce because there's no reason to buy an entire headlight for a headlight adjuster. That's not very feasible. Anyway, excuse my pajamas. It's 10:30 at night on a weekday, but I had an opportunity to make the video with this spare headlight that we have here, so I wanted to do something and produce that video for you. I do have plans to make further videos for some of my other parts, and I'll do that as I get chances, but I appreciate your time and thanks for watching. Chaz at ExoticSpecialtyParts.com.